Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We are on chapter 2 of book 4, which is the last chapter of the Spirit's book. We've been doing nature of future joys and sorrows for the past 2 weeks, and we are going to continue with that today. Again, we are talking, this chapter is called Future Joys and Sorrows. So we're talking about joys and sorrows of the spirits after returning to the spiritual world and preparing or not to a new incarnation. Okay, so we are going to start on question 977. Zoraida, can you read for us, please? Zoraida, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm sorry, got it. Okay. 977. If spirits are unable to hide their thoughts or all the acts of their lives from each other, does it mean that those who have wronged others are always in the presence of their victims? Common sense tells you that it cannot be otherwise. A, is it the disclosure of all our reprehensible acts and the perpetual presence of those who have been our victims in atonement for the guilty? Yes, it is more substantial than you think. It only lasts until they make amends for wrongdoing, either as a spirit or as a person in new physical lives. When we are in the spirit world, our entire past is revealed, and the good or bad that we did is known. Those who have done evil, who try to avoid their victims, do so in vain. They cannot escape their presence, and it is an atonement and a source of remorse until they atone for the wrongs they have done. Conversely, kindness and goodwill surrounds the spirit of an upright person. Even on earth, there is no greater torment for a bad person than the presence of his or her victims, whom they try to avoid at all costs. What happens when the illusions of passions dissipate and they understand the wrongs they have done? When they see their secret actions brought to light and their hypocrisy unmasked? When they realize that they cannot hide from those they have wronged? While the soul of the wicked is prey to shame, regret, and remorse, the soul of the virtuous enjoys perfect peace.
Okay. So when we go back to the spiritual world, again, spirits that are above us can read our thoughts and can see many times our past and our shortcomings. Again, if they are particularly interested in ourselves, our spiritual guides, our guardian angel, they know our past, they know our actions, and they know what we do. Now, we know a little bit about obsession or persecution of spirits, right? Both incarnates and discarnates. So we are in the presence, connected to our victims, and vice versa. Not all the times, but very frequently, right? That's the answer from the spirits. Common sense tells you that it cannot be otherwise. And the relationship with those that we have wronged is a relationship that has to be repaired. Not necessarily with those that we have wronged, because maybe they move on, they didn't care, they forgave us and moved on, but we carry the responsibility for the harm that we have caused, and we have to readjust. So we will be connected to our victims in a way, or until we make amends, as the Spirit says here, for our wrongdoing, either as a spirit or as a person in a new physical life. So we come to a reincarnation also surrounded by some of those who we have wronged or have wronged us, so we can readjust and repair the relationships, right? And that's why we find so many times difficulties in our families, because we find in our families both loved ones from previous existences and difficult ones that we have to readjust. And again, everyone just have to look at their family and they will know who is who there, right? In relation to ourselves, because, you know, maybe you have a difficult relationship with a sister and you have a great relationship with a brother, but your brother and your sister have a great relationship amongst them. So your problem is with your sister and vice versa. There is no other problem there, but there you are placed there to repair, to find a way to repair. Can we always repair? Of course not. Many times we end up making it worse than it should, right? But the idea, if we are placed in their presence in a new incarnation, is because we have the ability to repair. Then the comments from Kardec here talks about when we go back to the spiritual world. It's more, because we don't have the physical body and the forgetfulness of the past, it's more difficult for us to hide from those that we have caused pain, right? And actually, there are two reasons for that, right? It's our guilty conscience attracting them to us through the mental vibrations, and their conscience also trying to get revenge or to find a way to readjust with us, right? So the only thing that can repair that is we actively working on repairing, right? Recognition, repentance, repair, the 3 R's, right? That Rusara likes to talk about. First, you have to recognize your own mistakes or issues. Once you recognize, you regret, you find remorse, but that's not enough. You need to repair, actively repair. And again, the repair doesn't necessarily need to be with the victim, right? You can, the concept of pay it forward, right? Someone does good to you, you can do good to someone else, pay it forward. The repair can be paid also, paid forward. You can help someone that is not directly responsible. You are not responsible for their problem, but you can help them repair their problem with someone else by actively working on repair your own mistakes, right? And Kardec talks about a little bit about us here incarnated on Earth, right? When we understand the wrongs that we, in our physical life, sometimes we look to our past and we regret some of our actions, right? And that, you know, we carry these guilty feelings with us. And if we don't work to repair, we are going to be surrounded by shame, regret, remorse, as Kardec says here, right? So again, it's always the active work of repairing the mistakes we made, right? Okay. Questions?
John, yes, Carol here. Would you say then it's probably a little bit more difficult while a spirit is in the spirit world to actually do the work? In other words, to incarnate or reincarnate is sort of maybe the key to doing the repair work?
Yes, the reincarnation is the instrument that you have to repair the mistakes. But the process of the first 2 R's recognition or the repentance can happen in the spiritual world. The repair can also happen in the spirit world in terms of you as a spirit assisting and helping those in need. But the only way that you are going to truly recognize that you have overcome your tendency, or you are not going to repeat that mistake, is with a new reincarnation facing the same challenge again. So, you know, that's why we have here the atonements, the repairs of what we did in the past, right? This is a world of trials and atonements are repairs of our mistakes in the past that we have to face the situations here. So yes, Carol, the reincarnation. Otherwise, there will be no sense to have reincarnation, right? The reincarnation exists for us exactly to atone for the wrongs that we have done actively.
Oh, thank you for clarifying. Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Just make sure that what João said, the repair, not necessarily the person that committed the wrong in the past. The repair is basically an idea of the redirect your energies that before was towards evil, and now you redirect the same energies towards goodness. In that process, we will have the opportunity to face many situations that in the past, you choose to use the energy to do wrong, now you're going to do right with whoever. Because otherwise you may think that those two are going to have to reincarnate together. Not necessarily. Does it happen? Yes, it does happen. But not necessarily.
Okay. Okay, sorry, 978.
Okay, 978. Does the memory of the faults the soul committed when imperfect disturb its happiness even after it reaches purity? No, because it has redeemed its faults and successfully passed through the trials it had endured for that purpose. 979. Okay, go right.
The easiest example for us to understand this question is, do you feel guilty or regret mistakes you made when you were 3 years old? We don't even remember, right? Mostly. And even if we remember, or our parents tell us, they tell us laughing, right? Because there is no, we grew, we overcome that infancy. A perfect spirit have overcome all the trials and atonements that he had to go through. So it looks back on its own journey with the if we can understand, right, because it's very difficult for us to understand pure spirits, right? But he had reached the pure happiness, and the pure happiness means that there is no disturbance caused by any of things of the past. Now, does a perfect spirit is still concerned about their loved ones that have not reached perfection or they're struggling? Yes, but concern is not disturbed and is not it's not a conflict feeling. It's just a loving feeling and understanding that we are all going to reach perfection. So, but with our own a perfect spirit, it's not concerned with their own mistakes on their path of evolution, because they will look at it as learning experience, like we look at our mistakes as children as learning experiences, right? Things we did in school in first grade, second grade, that maybe we can remember some of those, right? fights we had with our little colleagues, do we still feel guilty about that unless we did something very bad? No, we don't. It's something related to the age, right? So it's an example of how can we relate to the answer to this question, because really we cannot understand the pure spirit. We haven't been there. The only one that passed through here was Jesus, and we've been trying to understand him for 2,000 years, and are still struggling to understand him. So that's the best we can get with. Okay? Questions? Comments? No? Okay, now we can do 979.
Okay, 979. Do the trials a soul must experience in the future to complete its purification cause a painful apprehension that hampers its current happiness? Yes, for a soul that is still tainted by imperfection, it could only enjoy perfect happiness when it has become truly pure. For souls that have reached a certain degree of progress, the thought of the trials they still have to experience causes no pain whatsoever. When the soul arrives at a certain degree of purification, it obtains a taste of happiness. A feeling of sweet satisfaction overwhelms it and is happy in all that it sees and all that surrounds it. As the veil shrouding the mysteries of creation is partially raised, the soul begins to perceive divine perfection in its entire splendor.
On our evolutionary process, the more we advance, the more we can have a small taste of what happiness of a more evolved spirit is, and the more inclined we will be to put the hard work to reach a higher level of evolution, right? At our stage here in general on Earth, where we are still too concerned with material things that we cannot understand the true happiness of more evolved spirits, the apprehension with our future, it's something much more common, right? Because for us to think what we have to do to become more evolved spirits, we know we have to struggle. So for us, as they say here, for a soul that is still tainted by imperfection, we can only enjoy pure happiness when it has become truly pure, right? The original in English, the original in French is truly, is not relatively like the translation says there. But you look at a spirit of like André Luiz, for instance, when we see the descriptions of André Luiz that he makes of the spiritual world, he has already a glimpse of more evolved spirits. He talks to his mother, a more evolved spirit. So he has a glimpse of happiness, and he commits to the work to reach that degree of happiness with the desire to do that, without the apprehension that we here, while we are incarnated, we still have, because of the forgetfulness of the past, of all the struggles. Now, when André Luiz comes to a new incarnation, that some people say that he already did, is he going to have these apprehensions? Possible. It's not a perfect spirit, and the spirit says here, they can only enjoy perfect happiness when it has become truly pure. So spirits that's still tainted by imperfection may have apprehension, right? But it's the progress of the spirit is, it's very slow until you reach a certain point. And after you reach a certain point, it goes up faster, because you become more attuned with the higher spirituality. You become more motivated to do the work to reach a higher degree. And we on Earth, we are moving from one level to another. So when we reach a world of regeneration, we will have the majority of the population working to achieve a state of happiness without being attached to material things a lot like we still are today, right? So it's going to happen. It's going to still take another 100, 200 years, but we're getting there. And when we get there, you know, the progress, when it starts to accelerate faster, because you reach a point where you understand better. And when you understand better, you are willing to work harder to reach the next level. Okay? Questions? Oh.
980. Is the sympathetic link that unites spirits of the same order a source of happiness for them? The union of spirits who sympathize with the love of goodness is one of their greatest joys, because they have no fear of seeing that union disturbed by selfishness. In the spiritual world, they form families inspired by the same sentiment, as they group into categories and experience joy in being together. This union constitutes the happiness of those worlds, the pure and sincere affection that elevated spirits feel and of which they are the object, is a source of happiness, because there are neither false friends nor hypocrites among them. People enjoy the first taste of happiness on earth when they meet others with whom they can enter into a pure and virtuous reunion. In pure existences, this happiness becomes indescribable and limitless, because they only meet sympathetic souls who are not saddened by selfishness. All is love in nature. Selfishness kills.
When we learn more about the spiritual world, and again, after this question by Kardec, after the Spirit's book, we have a lot more material, a lot more information on the spiritual world. We know how the spirits associated amongst themselves in the spiritual world, right? Through vibrations. And they find themselves reunited in places that are of a similar vibration. So you could call them families, right? If you want, like they say here, they form families inspired by the same sentiment. But it's a concept of the spiritual family, and it's a concept of the true love, which is not the love, you know, the agape in Greek, which is the Greek. In Greek, there are 7 definitions of love, right? The most pure one is agape, which is the fraternal love that unites the souls that are united for eternity. So you can imagine, right? We have a little taste here on earth, right? When you are together with a group of people that share the same pure interests, and again, we have to be careful here how we phrase this, because you know, we can always say that a gang shares the same interest also, right? And that's not pure sentiment, right? These are inferior sentiments. So, but when you are in a meeting of people that share the same elevated spiritual sentiments, you feel happiness, you feel well, right? We can talk here about us talking about spiritism. We share the same interest, we share the same desire to learn, to evolve spiritually. So we are happy to be here. Otherwise we wouldn't be, you know, nobody's forced to be here. We are happy to be here. So if we project this, the feeling that we have in a meeting like this, to a more permanent basis in a more elevated surroundings, we can kind of imagine what it would be a spiritual colony in the spiritual world with spirits that are working together for their progress, right? Again, there is no, as they say here, the Spirit tells us here, there is no false friends or hypocrites, right? We here in our meetings, we're still, you know, in our not talking about spirit, our meeting here today. I'm talking about general meetings with people here. We have false friends and we have hypocrites amongst groups that we get reunited, even if we share the same interests. So, but we are in perfect spirits. That's why we're still trying to learn. But we, as Kardec says here, we can taste the first taste of happiness when we meet others, when they can enter into a pure and virtuous union, right? That's the idea, right? Or it doesn't really need to be a spiritual study. It can be, you know, you have a group of people that are discussing philosophy, sincerely discussions, nothing spiritual, just philosophy in the material sense, physical sense of it, right? But you all share the interest, the curiosity, the desire to learn. You are going to feel happy, right? There is this phrase that you know, love what you do, and you never have to work one day in your life, right? That's, you know, you are doing something that gives you satisfaction. And if you, again, when we talk about material work, there are a lot of buts and ifs. We're not talking about that, but extrapolate this to a spiritual happiness, and we can sort of imagine what is the link that unites these sympathetic spirits, more elevated spirits in the spiritual world. And we can only aim to reach that level, but you know, the fact that we are studying, that we have an interest, that we are dedicating ourselves to it, is already a step forward in that direction. Okay. Okay. Danny.
But well, for us, we are not at this stage yet, right?
No.
So it seems that this kind of communities that you gave the example of, like spirits group, for example, when we have a symposium or an activity that a lot of people are together, or even a few people sharing the same kind of feelings, it seems that even if we try to have a mindset of trying to be happy in our day, it doesn't matter what you do or work, it seems that these kind of activities are only related to unpaid activities. Like it seems that if you are in a paid activity for a salary or a job or work, the vibration is very different.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be, but you are right. Most cases it is. It's the vibe, you know, because you are paying for something, you are expecting something in return, right? That's what we always talk about, paid mediumship, right? You go to a medium and you pay a medium to give you a message, you expect a message to be given, and the medium is kind of obliged to give you something in return. When you are in a meeting that you are there because you want to be, you didn't pay anything, nobody paid anything, it's a sharing of common ideas, the vibration tends to be more elevated, and it surrounds everyone. But that doesn't mean at our stage of evolution that you are not going to have people there that are going to have their inferior thoughts, and they are going to have disagreements, because we are in perfect spirits. Even if you put together 300 people in this loving environment, you are going to have someone complaining about something that they are not seeing the speaker, or they're not hearing, or the food is not good. So, but you know, the general vibration of the ambient makes the majority of people there feel good, feel better about themselves and about life. But you know, you have exceptions. We are all in perfect spirits. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. 981. Is there any difference in future conditions between souls who are afraid of death during life and souls who are indifferent to it or even looked forward to it with relief? There may be a very considerable difference between them, though this is often eliminated by the causes which gave rise to that fear or desire. Different feelings move people who dread death and those who look forward to it. These feelings determine the state of the spirit. For instance, when individuals desire death because it means the end of tribulations, desire is an act of defiance against God and the trials they must undergo.
Okay, so it's a very interesting question. Remember, we're talking about future joys and sorrows, right? So Kardec asks here if there is any difference between two people that one is afraid of death and the other is indifferent or look forward to it to get rid of this difficult physical life, right? And of course, we know that there is different, each case is a case of discarnation, right? And someone that is very afraid of death normally enters into a stage of despair, right? With if they have some sort of feeling that death is coming or they are faced with death. And many times when they find themselves in the spiritual world and they see that it's all over, they'll find relief, right? Because they were afraid so much. Like when sometimes here you are afraid, you're afraid of something, very afraid of something, and then you go through the experience, and then on the other side of it, you say, oh, it was not that difficult. You feel relieved, right? So that can happen. Now, for those that look for death, again, what is behind it is really what matters, right? Someone that is looking for death to be rid of problems that they have here in the physical life, problems that they don't want to deal with, of course, the consequences are going to be different from someone that desires to die because has been struggling with a disease and in pain for 6 months, 10 months, 1 year. So, you reach a point where you're suffering so much that you really asks for death as a relief for all this pain. So you can see that the consequences have to be different between these two type of people that both desire death, right? So in the end, it goes back to our conscience, right? Because let's say you suffer with a disease and with pain for 1 year, and then you wake up in the spiritual world, you learn that it's over, your physical body that was sick was left behind, you no longer feel pain. You are going to feel relief, and it's very likely that you are going to feel guilty for desiring to die because you were suffering. You were really in pain. But someone that has financial problems here and wants to die because wants to get rid of the worries about financial problems, and then you go back to the spiritual world and you face it, you look back and you rethink, if you shouldn't take advantage of more time here to learn and to grow, right? It can be very different consequence for you again in the spiritual world. So in the end, each case is a case. There is a lot of people that fear death because they don't know what they're going to find on the other side. These people eventually, if they are open-minded and they see what happens on the other side, they will feel relief, comfort, and they won't have a problem. There are those that think that they are going to find something else in the spiritual world, and if they don't find, they feel frustrated, they feel angry. That's a whole different story. But basically, we bring instinctively the fear of death. We discussed this in the past in the spirit school, right? And the fear of death is the fear of the unknown, right? Because it's a big change. In the end, it's, the reincarnation and death are the two big changes that we face during our journey as eternal spirits. And because we forget what happens in the spiritual world, we have fear. The problem is when this fear paralyzes us, prevents us from rationalizing, right? Sometimes you see people that face some things, they are paralyzed with fear here, and they don't react, they don't move. Things happen to them and they are unable to do anything, right? So if that transfers to when you are back to the spiritual world, it's going to be a struggle for you to readjust. Eventually we all readjust, because that's the everything comes to an end, right? And even the pain, the suffering, the struggles. But again, not two cases are the same. Okay, right? Last one.
Okay, 982. Is it necessary to acknowledge Spiritism and believe in spirit manifestations to ensure our happiness in the next life? If that were true, those who do not believe in them or who have not had the opportunity to learn anything about them would be disinherited, which would be absurd. Doing what is good is what ensures future happiness, and the good is invariably good, regardless of the path that leads to it. Belief in Spiritism helps our self-improvement by cleaning up our ideas about our future. It hastens the progress and advancement of individuals and the masses because it enables people to ascertain what the future will be, and is both a beacon and a source of support. Spiritism teaches us to bear our trials with patience and resignation, turns us away from actions that could delay our future happiness, and contributes to our reaching that happiness. However, it does not imply that we may not reach that same happiness without it.
Yes, this is a very important question, right? The big difference between Spiritism and other religions, beliefs, philosophies is the motto of Spiritism, right? Without charity, there is no salvation. We talked about this before here. It's not without Spiritism, there is no salvation. And in the gospel, there is a whole chapter talking about it. Without the church, there is no salvation. Without charity, there is no salvation. If it was true that you need to acknowledge Spiritism and believe in spirit manifestation to have happiness on the other side, very few people who have happiness on the other side, right? Because, what about the 1.4 billion people in India that never heard of Spiritism in their lives? Does it mean that if they don't know Spiritism, they won't be happy on the other side? Doesn't make any sense. Again, Spiritism is a doctrine of reason. The spirits are very clear here. Doing what is good is what ensures future happiness. And the good is invariably good, regardless of the path that leads to it. Any path that we choose of doing good will lead us to happiness, regardless of where this path is. For those that have no religion, no beliefs, and spend their whole lives doing good and helping others, they are going to be received on the other side with rejoice and with a lot of rewards that they themselves gave to them, right? Of course, it may take a while for them to recognize that they are on the other side because they don't believe. But once they do, all the benefit of what they did with their life. And again, I think it's more admirable for someone that has no belief to practice good without thinking about future happiness, right? Than someone that does it because they are afraid of what waits for them on the other side. And then Kardec gives an explanation here how Spiritism can help us, right? So if we don't need Spiritism to achieve happiness, why do we need Spiritism? Kardec tells us, because it helps our self-improvement by clearing up our ideas about our future, by explaining what happens on the other side, by explaining the causes and consequences. It hastens the progress and advancement of the individuals and the masses, because it enables people to ascertain what the future life will be, teaches us to bear our trials with patience and resignation, and turns us away from actions that could delay our future happiness. However, it does not imply that we may not reach the same happiness without it. Kardec makes it clear, and also we make it clear. Again, I mentioned this before here. Chico Xavier said this, that if the Spiritist motto was that without Spiritism there will be no salvation, he wouldn't be a Spiritist. Without charity, there is no salvation. And charity, practicing charity, is what guarantees our future happiness. The way you practice charity and where you practice charity, it doesn't really make any difference as long as you are doing it for doing good and trying to help your brothers and sisters. That's the only way that you are going to achieve happiness. You know, if you have all the Spiritist beliefs and you know Spiritism and you don't practice good at all, you continue to be, you know, selfish and thinking about yourself only. The knowledge of Spiritism may help a little, but it's not going to make you happy in the next life. On the contrary, it's going to create more pain because you knew and you didn't practice, right? So, okay, Danny.
So we talk a lot about here the lower zones, right? Like sticking with André Luiz's example. He was in that mental confusion, mental state. He didn't know about a future life at all, right? He was not aware of it. And then it took him 8 years to get out of his mind state and actual experience in the spiritual world. Now, let's give another example for a pastor, for example, that dedicated 30 years to a congregation and did good, and it's going to be living a positive experience in the spiritual world, right? Like it's saying here, it doesn't matter the religion. But if that person, for example, believed for all the years or sometimes for the entire lives that there is a heaven and hell, could it be that this person stays in a state of confusion, thinking is in heaven, like the way they portray heaven in their teachings? Because we know lower zones, yes, but what about the other side of the belief?
Someone that, let's say a priest, a pastor that spent 30 years doing good and trying to help those in the congregation, doing really the spiritual work that they are supposed to do, right? This spirit is not going to end in the lower zones, right? Because their mental vibrations are, you know, if you do good for 30 years, you are not forcing yourself to do good. It's a part of who you are. And if it's a part of who you are going to find yourself in a place where you will receive all the assistance that you need for the transition. Now, that doesn't mean that this person is going to accept or believe in what is being presented, right? The book And Life Goes On gives a very good idea of going back to the spiritual world and not being fully aware of being back in the spiritual world, right? They spend some time there without being told that they are back in the spiritual world, because it's not good for them for the moment, right? So in this case, he will be surrounded by spirits that know how to deal with him and his situation, and will give him the information that will make him feel comfortable and help him progress, right? And what this information is, I don't know. But you know, if tell him that heaven, hell, and purgatory do not exist, if he did all his life believing that, maybe it's going to cause more harm than doing good. So he's probably not going to be told to start with that it doesn't exist. He will maybe be told that he's in a hospital or house of assistance, transitional house, like the transitional colonies, right? In a place like that, for him to recover. They will give him some ideas of life in the spiritual world very slowly, for him to readjust the ideas. In the book On the Way to a World of Planetary Transition, part of the group of the spirits that went to the rescue there, one of them was a priest, right? And Manuel Filomeno de Miranda talks to the priest and asks about it. And he said, our conscious expands here in the spiritual world, but our beliefs do not change necessarily. So I continue to have my Catholic beliefs here expanded to the reality of the spiritual world, right? In last Sunday, we studied the case of Mariana in the book Between Heaven and Earth, which is a spirit that takes care of children in the spiritual colony. But her dedication is to her former Catholic congregation that she helps and assists, because they need, that's where she connects herself with. So, this priest pastor, he's going to continue working with his belief, and slowly we will expand his ideas and understanding of the spiritual world, but without any sudden changes, because that can cause more harm than good to him. I don't know anything here. No. Okay. Okay, we have 10 minutes, but we have time to start.
Okay.
Next one, temporary atonements.
Temporary atonements, 983. When atoning for faults in a new existence, does a spirit experience material suffering? If so, is it correct to say that the soul only experiences moral suffering after death? It is very true that when the soul is reincarnated, it is forced to suffer the trials of physical life. However, only the body experiences material suffering. When you often say that when someone dies that they no longer suffer, but this is not always true. A spirit no longer experiences physical pain, but depending on their imperfections, they may have to bear more severe moral suffering and may be even unhappier in a new life. Those who are greedy beg for bread and are prey to all the miseries of poverty. The proud experience all types of humiliation, and those who have abused their authority and treated subordinates poorly must obey an even crueler master. All the tribulations of life are atonements for the faults committed in a previous life, unless they are the consequence of faults committed in the present life. When you leave your present life, you will understand this. People who consider themselves happy on earth because they are able to satisfy their passions make little effort to improve themselves. Such ephemeral happiness is often atoned in the present life, but certainly it can be atoned in another life that is equally material.
So when talking about atonements here, right? we talk about our suffering. It can be moral and it can be physical, right? But it can only be physical in a physical body. We hear every week spirits complaining in our mediumship meetings of pain, of suffering, but it's not really their perispiritual body. It's in their minds. It's a consequence of what they carry from their incarnation with their physical bodies. So only the body experiences material suffering. The spirits are very clear here. There is no material suffering in the perispirit. The perispirit, our spiritual body, is matter, but there is no material suffering there. It's mental. It can be associated, right? They talk about, I have pain in my stomach, I have pain in my head, but the pain is in the mind, is not in the perispirit. But it does not mean that they don't suffer. They do suffer. We cannot say, oh, it's not true. You're not feeling the pain. No, they are. The pain is in the mind. They are feeling the pain. It's not physically materially physically located in the head, let's say. It's in the mind, right? But the reincarnation is the opportunity of repairing and carrying those pains to the physical body, to the new physical body, for the atonements necessary for us to repair, right? And the spirits talk about the consequences, right? Those who are greedy beg for bread. Those who humiliated people are going to suffer humiliations. Tribulations of life are atonements for faults committed in a previous life or consequence of faults committed in the present life. So that's the atonement. The spirits explain very clear to us that we face the consequences of our own actions. Many times our present actions committed in our present life, right? So if you smoke your whole life, you cannot blame your lung problems in a previous incarnation, right? You damaged in this incarnation as the consequence of the faults committed in the present life. And then they finish talking about those who are able to satisfy their passions here without making much effort to improve. And they talk about this ephemeral happiness. They are going to create consequence, because if we don't make an effort, we are going to have to face the consequence of our lack of effort to evolve. It could be in this life or it could be in the next life, right? It's important to understand the atonements. They can happen in the spiritual world in a sense that we are going through the suffering in the spiritual world as a consequence of what we have done. This can be the start of the atonement process, but the fully complement of the atonement, it has to happen in a new reincarnation as we bring to the spiritual body, to the physical body, the challenges and the consequence of what we have done. So there is suffering both in the physical and spiritual world, but the physical body has material suffering, right? The pain that I feel here in my arm is the pain in my arm. It's not, I feel it, my mind reflects the pain that I'm feeling, but it is the pain in my arm, right? We take medicines, physical medicines, to treat the pain, right? In the spiritual world, you are treating you as a whole, right? You are not treating a specific area, right? When André Luiz, we see the scene in the hospital there in the beginning of the movie Nosso Lar, right? The stomach. He died of a stomach cancer, right? They are treating the stomach. Really, they are treating the whole, right? And then very quickly, we don't hear about it anymore, right? He leaves the hospital and there is no consequence, because once you are healed in the mind, the perispirit doesn't reflect anything. Okay. Right. We're going to stop here. Any comments? Any additional questions? Nope. Okay, so the United States Spiritist Federation released a new app that is called Be My Hope. You can download it from the App Store or Android. It's a new app that offers prayers, classes. You can ask for prayers there. It is a very useful app for those that want to have a spiritual connection with Spiritism and are in need of help or something like that. So Be My Hope is the name of the app, and you can look at it in the App Store. Okay. This Saturday we have a lecture presentation by Andrea Marshall Neto from Florida, and she changed the title. The subject is the same, but she changed the title to Spiritist Knowledge, Creating a Positive Reality in Your Life. She talks about when you have knowledge of Spiritism, it creates a better understanding and better. Her description is, in light of the uncertainty concerning revelations made by spirits, one may ask, so why to study Spiritism? And she discusses the importance of that Spiritism brings to our life. Our Sunday study is the Medium's book, okay? And book club next week, chapter 11 of Prelude to a Divine Kingdom. And for those that didn't register for the symposium but still want to go to Portland, Oregon, it happens in a couple of weeks, right? Last Saturday of the month, September 30th. It's going to be in Portland, Oregon, a whole day of presentations. The subject is mental health. It's a very good one. Spiritual path to mental balance. And you can still register, or otherwise you can watch it online on September 30th. Okay. Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, thank you very much, John and Elmo, and thank you, Sarita, for reading this evening. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we are grateful again to be together for our studies of the Spirit's book, the chapter being Future Joys and Sorrows. May we be able sincerely to recognize our mistakes, offer regrets, and actively repair our mistakes by doing goodness and keeping our vibrations positive. The essence of happiness will be obtained by the perfect spirits through their motivation to the higher levels of evolution and consciousness. They successfully complete their atonements and reach for higher levels of joy. Once they understand this, they move forward much more rapidly. Some fear death, others look forward to death to relieve the physical suffering or the indifference of living. Each is a case being unique. Assistance is always available to those that cross over. Time will determine it. It is not immediate necessarily. However, Spiritism positively helps us understand what can happen as an eternal spirit in which we are. We bear our trials through reincarnation, and we have the understanding and knowledge via cause and consequence. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and good spirits for guiding us and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us. And for our loved ones, our teachers, the directors, the counselors, the mediums, the workers, and those who are affiliated with our center and those who are participating. We pray for inner peace, and now especially world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical world as well as the spiritual world. We pray for our center, SGNY, and for all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, expand, and be protected each day and each night. And as we close this evening, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. For we are never alone, and goodness may prevail as we share, as we are able to do so through our discernment. May we go forth now and remind ourselves to be beacons of light, of love, of peace, of service, and most humbly, charity. So be it.